Ти велики.
You, the Great One, who blesses and creates all. Arrange everything in me and around me. Come and set right my mind. Let it think right. Come and set right my heart, for love alive to spring from it.
Драги приятели, намираме се на мястото на
Dear friends, we are here on the very spot of our teacher, a sacred place for us, his disciples. Once upon a time there was here a tufty and beautiful quarter, hidden deep in greenery and flowers, small wooden houses peering lovingly out of the blossomed trees. You would hear music from every house, either singing, either playing the violin or the guitar. The teacher used to encourage his disciples to indulge themselves in music and arts till a very old age, and especially in music, because music is a breathing of our consciousness. Nowadays only this spot is left from the colourful place, from this oasis surrounded by a few pine trees, this place which once used to be our favourite lawn, where we once played the sacred dance Paneurhythmy, the very dance we are going to talk about today. A few words about Paneurhythmy. Paneurhythmy, supreme, universal, cosmic rhythm. The teacher provides the deeper, esoteric meaning of these three components of the word Paneurhythmy. Pan, universal principle of love, as creator and maker. The male principle, the active one. You, universal principle of love in terms of preserving and receiving. The female principle from which all living things originate. The first, substance and rhythm. Rhythmy, this is what flows in time, what repeats itself. The universal principle of periodicity, a harmony of the individual parts in the whole. Paneurhythmy is a vast science and great art that will be studied from now on in its fullness. It is based on the following laws: the relationship between man and nature, the connection between the physiological and psychological processes. This means that paneurhythmy is a psychophysiological act, expressing the correspondence between concept, thought, music and movement, which will be discussed in depth and shown in detail in the following course of Paneurhythmy. The main underlying points of Paneurhythmy are God, nature, the rising sun, and the thought, which we should have while performing these beautiful exercises, is the thought of the great, the eternal, the wise, the awakening human soul. The separation of the human soul from God is one of the most significant moments of existence. The human soul, this winged guest, along with the human spirit, have completed their evolution, as the teacher says. Much has been said about human soul, and a lot more will be said further. For example, Hermes Trismegistus says, "The human soul is veiled in light. If one doesn't take good care of it, it may flicker and die out. But if the sacred oil of love is poured into it, it becomes stronger, consolidates its forces, and starts to glow as an immortal candlestick." One could think that the spirit and soul of man, being perfect, have no place on the earth, because we ourselves are not perfect. However, the big sacrifice of soul proves to be exactly that: it sacrifices itself, temporarily forgets, so to speak, all its supreme dimensions, in order to be left to dwell our physical body for some time. Unfortunately, the spirit cannot get in contact with our body. It is only an ambassador of the divine ideas sent to us by God. An ambassador who needs an interpreter, a mediator, who in turn can interpret the heavenly messages. This interpreter becomes the soul. The spirit comes and goes back and forth, transmitting these messages, while the soul stays in our body, obliged to work all throughout human life, that is, until the time comes for it to depart again to its Father. And so, the spirit, figuratively speaking, takes the soul down while it walks back on the path, the involutionary one coming down to earth in order to express itself in one human being. The soul, as I've said before, forgets temporarily its limited dimensions when it descends into our three-dimensional body. Even there, the teacher says, it doesn't stay all the time. It simply craves to return back to its starry birthplace, and from time to time it slips away, but the linking thread, as well as the purpose it has to interpret God's messages, connects it to our body through the spirit. For it, our body is like a prison. But we, as reasonable and conscientious people, intending to keep going on the path of self-improvement, on the path of perfection, we have the task, and I'd say a completely conscientious one, of converting this prison into a temple of our soul, where it would feel more or less comfortable. That is, we have to conscientiously assist the soul in its work, the higher self in the almost unbearable task of processing the energies of the lower self. Scientists have established that when a man dies, he loses 30 grams of his weight. This shows that the soul, which has flown away, contains a small amount of material substance. In fact, this material substance provides the chance for it to get in contact with our physical body. From a human point of view, this hard work of the soul could be considered a convict's one. But the soul has an honorable task, and when it leaves our human body to present itself again at the feet of God, it will offer him several diamonds for which it suffered, in the same way as the pearl oyster produces a magnificent pearl from a sand particle as a result of a lot of hard work. The soul was able to sublimate several supreme cells of our organism and to convert them from carbon into a diamond and to present them as a gift at the feet of God. Then and there, the soul has fulfilled its task. Well, paneurhythmy represents the path of the human soul in its ascending spiral, because the evolutionary path is exactly a spiral. This path, this three-dimensional figure, represented in 2 dimensions, gives in fact a circle. That is why paneurhythmy is played in a circle with one center, because all its points are the same distance from the center. That is, there is only one God, creator and maker, great wise source, the Absolute, or whatever name we choose to call him. And now, what is paneurhythmy? Paneurhythmy is a universal and harmonious dance, a beautiful synthesis of movement and music, which exists in the entire cosmos, including the Earth, of course. Because the laws ruling the cosmos apply also to the Earth, therefore everything surrounding us is paneurhythmy in the broadest sense of the word. The flying of pigeons and the beautiful flowers, the clouds and the sky, the music of the wind and the movement of our Earth in the course of its evolution. Also the movement of the other planets around the Sun, and the Sun within the galaxy, etc. All this is paneurhythmy. What would an observer see looking at paneurhythmy? He or she would see a green lawn or a mountain wrapped in the sunshine of the rising sun. Smiling people in one or several circles, a band playing in the center, a pleasant and beautiful music, attracting each passerby to stop and listen. The dancers illuminated by a certain incredible light, not only sunshine, and by the music, which at times resembles our folklore. Rhythms of the familiar ročenica resound but much clearer and more perfectly. This would be the first impression of someone who sees the living circle of paneurhythmy for the first time. It is living not only because living people play the dance, but because at the very moment when paneurhythmy is danced on the earth, it is danced also in the invisible world. Paneurhythmy represents this magic wonder, which takes the dancers up with great rising force. Figuratively, it takes them up from the physical circle of paneurhythmy and transfers them through the spiritual world and brings them to the gates of the divine world. Therefore, paneurhythmy is the overture introduction into the divine world. In this context, all sorts of conversations, debates, or any kind of disharmonious relationships could be fatal and simply impossible and unacceptable. I have already mentioned why paneurhythmy is played in a circle. This circle turns anti-clockwise, from right to left, the same way as most of the Bulgarian circle dances or chorot turn from right to left. Usually the traces of ancient teachings in the old temples and old occult schools could be found in the folklore of any country. Why from right to left? Because the heavenly bodies move also from right to left, and the purpose of paneurhythmy is to make us co-rhythmic. That is, to synchronize our pace with the cosmic rhythm. In synchronizing ourselves with this cosmic rhythm, we are really simply charging ourselves from the cosmic energies, especially if we think conscientiously about it. Many beings have walked our path. These invisible brothers of ours intend to help us. They have covered our evolution, and some have already completed their evolution. Others are doing so now, and because they see us as brothers, they want to extend their help. But in order to understand their language and to give them the chance to contact us, we have to study paneurhythmy. It is the key, says the teacher, which you are going to hand to these supreme wise beings to enable them to unlock people's hearts, the hearts of all humanity, and the divine flame to start flickering in their hearts, while improving themselves, developing their virtues. From this point of view, paneurhythmy has a strong educational role. One can self-educate by means of paneurhythmy. One can overcome certain negative hereditary characteristics. One can set forth tasks, which one can solve much more easily and with more success, exercising paneurhythmy than without it. One can help the whole of humanity if one connects with all good and wise beings. And one wonderful day, all good people on the earth will reach over their hands. Referring to John the Evangelist's Gospel, chapter 14, the evangelist says, that is, Christ says through him, "Now I leave because the prince comes." Here comes the question, who is the prince? It is not difficult to guess who is the prince on the earth. Imagine the rune of the earth. The symbol is a circle with a cross on the top. This is the astronomical, astrological sign of the earth. What does it show? It shows that the earth is the kingdom of suffering. But the fact that the devil is on the earth, and this is his kingdom, the king of evil, as Christ calls him, this does not mean that his power will exist here on the earth eternally. The teacher says that 2/3 of the good has already triumphed on the earth. Hence there is a small part of the evil left to overcome. It could be done with our help and that of all the people on the earth if we think and pray alike and meditate for this to happen. Then and there the earth will become a real paradise on earth. Then the suffering will cease to be the means by which humanity learns. Then the cross in the symbol of the earth will go underneath the circle as it is with Venus. There the symbol is a circle with a cross underneath. The goddess of love and the arts has already been on this road. She has brilliantly passed this exam, the one of love. The beings living there evidently do not suffer. They have conquered suffering. They did it through love. Well, what more to say about paneurhythmy? It is this and that and many other things. Paneurhythmy is danced in the early morning hours when the earth vibrates with love and waits for its lover, expects the sun to appear, this visible image of God, the lover of the earth. At that time, the sun is positive, the earth is negative, and we, as her children, are negative. We are drawn to the greatest extent to receive through the sun those divine gifts which it brings to us. That is, those supreme beings who live on the sun. That is why in the morning it is beneficial for our health to go out and meet the sunrise and to play these sacred dances through which we learn the language of the universe and to draw in full from the great heart of love. Each and everyone could profit from Paneurhythmy if he or she regularly and conscientiously plays Paneurhythmy, because thought is power. It was proven mathematically by Paul Dirac, one of the greatest mathematicians. He was awarded the Nobel Prize for it. And namely because of this, if we apply the power of thought along with our emotional strivings, can you imagine what kind of results we could have? If the entire nation danced Paneurhythmy, says the teacher, regularly and conscientiously, no evil could have reached it and no diseases would have existed. Isn't it a good idea for our children to dance Paneurhythmy too? Why not practice it in the kindergartens, in schools, by young people in universities, everywhere where there is a possibility to dance? There are so many possibilities in Bulgaria. Why not create and raise a generation with highly developed morality and ethics? At least give them a chance to develop. It really is worth thinking about. Well, Paneurhythmy is, in this sense, a method of self-education, as well as of education. It charges the people who have played the dance with energy, not only during and immediately after the dance, but also throughout the whole day. Because after we've played the whole dance, it has the quality of reducing the individual vibrations of our movements to a common denominator, to make them homogeneous. This homogeneity, says the teacher, facilitates communication, whereas between man and woman, man and society, mother and children, or business relationship. Only then can we think of some kind of harmony, when the individual movements are brought to a harmony and become homogeneous. The energy provided by Paneurhythmy accompanies us during the whole day. Our body is physically enriched. All parts of our body, hands and feet, are being stirred. All muscles, even the smallest ones, from the immobility humanity presently suffers, are being stirred by the vibrations. Paneurhythmy resounds throughout the entire universe. Years ago, a seminar was held, attended by all the spacemen. It was an international seminar held in our beautiful town of Smolyan at the planetarium. This was during the totalitarian times. One of our friends decided to play incognito some instrumental music of Paneurhythmy in the planetarium as nice and quiet background of the discussion. Evidently, the subject was the cosmos. One of the spacemen, I was told, asked what was this music in the background. "But I know it, I've listened to it when I was flying in space," he exclaimed. As it is said in the scripture, "Who hath eyes to see, who hath ears to listen?" Maybe he was the only spaceman who was tuned to the wavelength on which the paneurhythmic music was sounding, but nonetheless, we are grateful to him. It resounds in the entire universe. We must be immensely grateful to the teacher for this hard task he had fulfilled, bringing paneurhythmy down to us, to our physical world, from those invisible worlds, showing it to us, for teaching us with great fatherly patience how to play the dance, and thus making us privy to these great wise beings who have created the cosmos, who have created the earth.
Да я играем. И така ние станахме съпричастни на тези велики разумни същества, които са творили космоса, които са творили Земята.
The earth, says the teacher, is the graduation work of a supreme being. And as a great pedagogue, the teacher did it in a very beautiful way. He had bequeathed to his followers, his disciples, to believe that by participating in paneurhythmy, they were the ones who give birth to it. In fact, this is a wonderful teaching method. Every evening after work, they would gather on this very lawn, from which, as I have already said, only several pine trees were left, and they all were eagerly studying the steps which the teacher for many nights had tried, so to speak, to take down from the universe and adjust them for us, the beings from the three dimensions. Paneurhythmy, in fact, is a visualized image of this divine teaching, which the teacher expressed in his school on the earth. I have filled for centuries, in the future, the whole universe with the Word of God, said the teacher. Many and many thousands of years ago, a catastrophe took place in the solar system. The black sun, which the scientists call the black holes, and called black suns by the teacher. So one of these black suns, an antipode of our sun, that is, containing all the negative things, unlike our sun, which emanates so much love, so this black sun penetrates in our solar system and destroys one of the most beautiful planets among them, the Phaeton. It was located in the same spot where today the asteroid belt is located. In fact, the asteroid belt represents the parts from the destroyed planet Phaeton. In Greek mythology, this is reflected in the legend about Phaeton, who stole his father's Zeus' chariot, and, not knowing how to drive it, rushed in the skies. And what happened? Of course, the chariot broke into The parts of the destroyed planet were collected by some of the bigger planets, which had the task assigned to them by our Sun, the father of our solar system, to improve these parts and, on one wonderful day, to restore the destroyed planet Phaeton. For this catastrophe in the solar system, the teacher said, "At that time we lost the battle because we could not penetrate into the deepest plots of evil. We are not going to lose a second time." That is, evil is much more ingenious than good. Evil even uses forms created by good, sneaks insidiously in it and acts. A long time passes before we understand that from this form, which originally served good, light, bright, the White Lodge, in fact became an instrument of the Black Lodge. There are a lot of examples of this in human history. But let us go back to the catastrophe. As a result of this, the Black Sun crept inside the constellation Virgo. The symbol of Virgo is a beautiful, tender and pure virgin, holding an ear of wheat with the star Spica on top in her hand. The constellation Virgo used to have that perfect quality of the eternal love, which unfortunately had disappeared after the catastrophe. That is why love is transient and very changing. All the planets within the solar system were affected by the penetration of the Black Sun in our system. The disturbances are in three directions. 1. The circular orbits of the planets were disturbed. Until then, all planets used to have circular orbits. We know from geometry that the circle is a figure with one center, all points of which are at the same distance from the center. As a result of the Black Sun breaking through the solar system, there comes a figure with two centers, that is an ellipse, our Sun and the Black Sun. The circular orbits of the planets were modified and became elliptical. In fact, they were influenced not only by our Sun, but alas also by the Black Sun, the influence of evil, of eternal egotism, of unlimited greed, death and destruction. This is what the Black Sun symbolizes, and that is why it is so unbelievably dense. Another way in which our planets, the children of the solar system, were affected is, unfortunately, by disturbing the axis. The vertical axes of the planets were damaged to such an extent that some of them reached not only a horizontal position, but also went beyond it, and still further downward, as is the case with Uranus. The vertical axis is related to the world of ideas, and when the planet is changed in respect to this world, the planet becomes deformed. Our planet, the Earth, had also been affected. It lost its vertical axis. The task of the solar system is to bring back to the planets their vertical axes. For us inhabitants of the Earth, she is our mother. It is no accident that in the folklore the Mother Earth is called Suckling Mother. She is a living being, and we have to be immensely thankful to her for the life she gives us, and the Sun is our Father. Hence, the Sun assigns the task to all his children, including the Earth, to restore their vertical axes, in order to have an ideal relationship with the cosmic consciousness, with the divine world. The cosmic consciousness is, so to speak, the introduction to the divine world. The direction of turning is the third way in which the planets had been affected. Venus, for example, had changed the direction of its turning. All the celestial bodies are turning from right to left. That is why Paneurhythmy is danced from right to left in synchrony with them. Venus had been affected and turns clockwise. That is why the people born under the influence of the planet Venus always want to be different from the others, more extravagant, more modern. Venus directs the arts and love and even the fashion. That is why it changes so often. But this is only a lyrical digression. Why is the catastrophe in the solar system being mentioned? Because Paneurhythmy in this respect is a harmonious and creative expression of the divine principle in the universe, shown through those who dance it. This is one of the methods of the great living and intelligent nature. To straighten the axis of our planet, to restore the relationship with the world of ideas. The vertical, that is, the relationship, the earth, the sun, which goes along the backbone, and that is why the position of the body in the Paneurhythmy should be very upright. The body must be very erect. I'm going to talk about the posture because it is related to the world of ideas, and the vertical axis, the backbone, to be very erect, because alongside it the energies flow from the sun to the earth and vice versa. By playing the dance conscientiously, with an upright body and erect backbone, we are helping a little our planet, the Earth, to be able to gradually, step by step, straighten its axis. Turning, dancing in the circle of Paneurhythmy, we again and again assist our planet, and therefore all planets in the solar system, to come back to their circular orbits. That is, there is one and only center, the Sun, which for us is the visual image of God, says the teacher. And behind this visual image for us, our physical sun, stands, of course in a figurative sense, stands one much more superior sun. This is the spiritual sun, which is ruled by the divine sun. The divine, the spiritual and the physical are the three worlds that are interdependent. They flow into each other and work jointly on all the planets, including our own, the Earth. So Paneurhythmy leads us directly and indirectly to the circle, and that is why the circle is an important figure to observe in order for the circular orbits of the planets to be restored and naturally moving from right to left, synchronizing their movement with this of all the celestial bodies. We are going to help all those planets that reverse the direction of their movement. That is, we will join again that harmonious choir in which the entire solar system, all the planets, our sisters and brothers, sing, and our voice will sound more and more harmonious. If we consider once again the catastrophe in the solar system, and with the help of the astronomers look through the telescopes, we will see that the rings of Saturn are nothing else than the parts of the destroyed Phaeton. But because Saturn is related to the energies of order and discipline, they assigned to him to introduce order in this chaos, in this disorder created by the black sun. To introduce order, synchrony and rhythm, and because of this, the astronomers used to observe for 300 years the distance Cassini's cleft, which is located between the rings of Saturn, being constant at all times. That is, there Saturn works using his most positive abilities to restore order in this chaos. Or, for example, let's take the asteroid belt Trojans. Observed by the astronomers, it represents a constellation of stars which stays the same one throughout all the years of observation. The astronomers observe it for many years now, which means that the wise nature, the light beings, the forces of good, have already been given the task to restore the order in the solar system.
Силите на доброто вече са впрегнати, така да се каже, за да внесат порядък в Слънчевата система.
When we play the dance of Paneurhythmy conscientiously and think about these things such as vertical axis, the circular orbit, we have to move with small steps. Why small then? Because these are the methods of nature. Nature works with small values. Good works with small values. And it does it gradually. A child was born. Step by step, it grows under the cares of his mother and father, society, etc., becomes a youth, then an adult, and for all this time and efforts are required. On the opposite, evil acts on an impulse, and in most cases, suddenly, out of the blue. It is not necessary to look at the wars. They are good enough proof of the fact how difficult it is to build a human life, and alas, how quickly it is taken away. Why offer evil a chance to express itself again, if we as reasonable beings carry in our hearts only good feelings, benevolent and positive thoughts and good deeds? We stimulate the virtues put in us, and they are put in every living being. We give them the chance to develop. And then our children, our generation, will be completely different. These destructive negative impulses and strivings in our children and youth will disappear. They will be directed to one much more creative, much more constructive and conscientious work for the building of the personality as a conscientious and very ethical one. In fact, this is one of the tasks of Paneurhythmy. But let's start the first 10 exercises. They are a small part of the first section of Paneurhythmy, which has 3 sections. The first part consists of 28 exercises, which the teacher calls paneurhythmic ones. That is, this is not yet Paneurhythmy, but a preparation, a prep class, a transition to the real Paneurhythmy, the sun rays and the pentagram. If we divide it to A, B, C, the first big cycle relates to the physical world, to our Earth. Since the very first gesture of the 10 exercises, the seeds from the divine and the spiritual world are planted in this physical one. The small cycle, that is, the first 10 exercises, represent one continuous cycle, as the teacher says, because they correspond with the season spring. It will be good to mention here that in Paneurhythmy all seasons of the year are presented. Spring, summer, autumn, and the winter is understood as a preliminary, internal, invisible process to our eyes, as the processes in nature. When in the autumn the grains of wheat are planted, throughout the entire winter they lie under the soil, waiting for the appropriate conditions to grow. That is, waiting for the spring. They are not dead, but simply not activated. They are in a state of rest, but under this external rest inside themselves, they are working, concentrating all their energy, waiting for spring. The seeds are still inactive in a state of peace, but under the external calm they work within themselves. They concentrate all their energy waiting for the appropriate moment to let their roots downward towards the nutritive juice of the earth and to gather all their powers to pierce this hard shell and come out on the surface. On the earth, in the soil, where the conditions for their germination are much more favorable. It is not by chance that the teacher speaks so often about the grain of wheat. He says the grain of wheat symbolizes the road of the human soul. From its very coming down on the earth through the spirit till its flying away back to its celestial place of origin, this is a long road of the human soul on which we're going to dwell later. So back to the notion that the winter in Paneurhythmy is understood as the individual work of each human soul, of every man, who has decided in full conscience to start on the road of evolution. And when a work is done conscientiously, the conscience attracts the energies. The invisible beings, who are our helpers, when they see our conscientious efforts to go on the road of improving, become so happy that they try their best to help us. And so back to the first 10 exercises, representing one small but continuous cycle, in fact correspond to the processes which take place in nature, around us and along with us, which in spring are eager and quick. Until yesterday there was snow, then the spring wind starts blowing and the sun shining, and here they are, seeds in germination, quick to grow, the flowers in bloom. That is why the first 10 exercises are played in the same pace, no pause between them and no stop. They are continuous because they are related to the invigorating spring energies. Of course, we have to understand it as a symbolic awakening of the human soul. And this awakening is not a one-act process, but a gradual one, as it all happens in nature around us. It is dangerous for the human soul to be awakened suddenly, either very fast or not in time. It is not yet strong and is not in a position to stand these vibrations, and then, alas, unwanted things can happen to it, namely to the human personality. It lives within us. The first day of spring.
Ісус любов, ставайте от сандеця, пролять міла веч дойде, тяла то природа те, сонце тепло вече грей, носить цвітя і плодове, носить і песні і грі, повний всяка твар живот, буді радость воздухот, розвеселява серця тобі. Грей, грей, сонце до благодатно, це убережно втяла та земля, і його кіч розпреля свій безброй цветя. Бляскові звезді бриллянтні светлі сказання молвят, де чистота луна, без спір лети по своя пот, по небес наших, і нелят пристига след нужда. Сила і радость, младость і гордіч, славця доносить і вдохновлява, і возроства в красота. Сила і радость, младость і гордіч, славця доносить і вдохновлява, і возроства в красота. Этого рождался красивый день, этого славце тока нас играй, химни курата весело птичице пей, бодро играем по росній траві цветя. Светло та радость обільної грай, сила в душа та безспірно і злівання. Светло та радость обільної грай, сила в душа та безспірно і злівання. Нікла літите попічами, дивні мусила вас п'яне, присяну струна арфа нарило сидім, машло то сонце посрештами наранено. Вечір сіяйний без звезди слідим, і луна та прекрасна в небесна та шир. Вечір сіяйний без звезди слідим, і луна та прекрасна в небесна та шир. Этого рождался красивый день, этого славце тока нас играй, химни бурата весело птичице пей, бодро играем по росній траві цветя. Светла та радость обільної грай, сила душа та безспірно і злівання. Светла та радость обільної грай, сила душа та безспірно і злівання. Порвія день напролет та, порвія день на радость та, порвія день на любов та, носила сила і живот, носила сила і живот. Порвія день напролет та, порвія день на радость та, порвія день на любов та, носила сила і живот, носила сила і живот. се